I've always sort of thought of, well, sales is kind of pushy and kind of gross. And I have to reconfigure my thinking on it because instead it really is about how can I help you achieve what you need to achieve? And so my greatest challenge is learning the skills to be able to demonstrate that genuine need for me to be in service, right? And that's just how I'm oriented. That's what motivates me. How do I connect that with the right messaging to the right people?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Growth Shift. I'm Jennifer, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for another episode where we explore the ideas, strategies, and stories that drive real business growth and measurable impact. Today, I'm excited to welcome Nazma Rosado, Principal Consultant at Avion Consulting. Nazma, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really looking forward to diving into your background, hearing about the trends and shifts you're seeing in the industry, and learning what's working and what's challenging for you right now. So, to kick things off, Nazma, could you please introduce yourself, your role, and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Jennifer. I'm really excited to be here. A little bit about my role. I'm a management consultant, meaning that I do all things. So I spend a good majority of my time as an executive coach, meaning with C-suite individuals and various levels of leadership and helping to diagnose what might be the thing that we can clear a path for them with. Also, spend a fair amount of time creating different leadership learning opportunities. So, designing various workshops and programs and then facilitating and delivering them. Aside from that, I also have a degree in org design and org development. So, sometimes I have clients who are going through major changes like mergers and acquisitions or leadership changes. And we look at, is the company structured in the right way for your current and future goals? And how do we help, maintain or influence your culture and assure that we're providing for long-term success for your staff, your employees, your customers, all of the above. So a lot of engagement and culture work as well as design and change management.
Fantastic. What inspired you to join Avion? What was the motivation behind that?
Yeah. So I have almost 30 years experience working in biotech and pharmaceuticals and really grew up in that industry and learned a tremendous amount, met some of the best people and did some value driven work, which was amazing. But the thing that I was always drawn to was people. And how do I make situations better for people? So, for a good while, that was focused on process optimization. How do we take the things people complain about and make them less, complain aboutable, right? How do we just improve our processes or our systems? And then eventually that spread into our people, right? So do we need to have stronger leaders? Do we need to have additional or better training for first line managers? Do we have clear succession plans? Do we have a clear understanding of what our career ladder is and what the learning journey is? From coming in as maybe an analyst in a finance organization and actually working your way all the way up to partner. What's the learning that you need for every level? So I started doing that as a part of working in pharma and really loved it, really enjoyed it. And I left just before the 2020 meltdown we all lived through. In 2019, I decided to start my own company. It was the second time that I started a company and to just consult, be a consultant and do what I love, which I would encourage anyone to do. Follow your passion, do the things you love because then you truly enjoy every single day. And I was doing that. I did it for a couple of years, but after COVID, it was just such a lonely situation sitting at my home office. So I was feeling the need for connection with more than just my clients, but to have that community where I can learn from my peers. And so Avion came along and said, "Hey, why don't you join us?" And I thought, you know what? Let's see. Let's see. And I interviewed equally as they were interviewing me, all of the partners, some of the principals, and I was just like, these people are great. They're smart and they're caring and I felt just so aligned with their mission. And so that's how I joined them.
Fantastic. How did you land your first big opportunity at Avion?
I will let you know when it happens.
Okay.
I had two clients from when I had my own firm that I brought with me when I joined Avion. And part of the reason for joining, aside from being a little bit lonely and craving that community, was also having had such a long career in biotech and pharma. I had a lot of connections in that space, but I didn't want to limit myself to only one industry. And so by joining Avion, I've been able to work with big law, automotive companies, finance companies, just all of these different industries that I would have never had exposure to. So that has been really amazing. I'm still looking for, big client, but I'm really happy at the same time working on smaller clients that have special needs that I can really dive into. And I'm grateful that at Avion, aside from, the clients that we each have, we share because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And, we each have our strengths. So we leverage one another, which keeps me quite busy.
I can imagine. All right, let's shift a little bit and talk about what's happening in the consulting industry right now. What trends are you noticing and how are they influencing the way you connect with your customers and deliver your services?
Yeah. I think not to, keep blaming 2020, but I think in 2020, a lot of people unfortunately were laid off or, left their jobs and went into consulting. So there was a little bit of flooding of the pipeline when it came to consultants and different kinds of consulting, not purely management consulting, but a lot of that. And what I'm beginning to see is people going back into industry or fully retiring rather than the one foot in, one foot out sort of situation that had been present for the past few years. I think part of that is because everything changed and is still changing, right? So as you well know, AI is, driving a lot of that change. And you always have the option of getting on the bus or getting off the bus. And I think for a lot of folks, they're like, I'm going to get off the bus because I don't really know where this is headed. And it's a whole new way of thinking and working. So we're beginning to see a little bit of weeding out of that overflow that we experience. I think specific to AI and how it's changing the industry, I do think there are also lots of folks, I think across all industries, but who are concerned about, oh, is AI going to take my job? And that is the one thing that I have zero concerns about because I think, like any other technology, you have to figure out how to work with it, right? How to embrace. I lived through, people were all like, what's going to happen at midnight? And it's like, well, you put, your guardrails, how do I protect certain things or what do I do? And
Yeah.
now we laugh looking back, but oh my God, nothing happened, right?
Mhm.
But it's always that sort of fear and concern of the unknown. And so, as a lifelong learner, for me, it's about how do I limit the unknown by getting involved, right? By testing things and trying things and learning about it, and then figuring out how to best leverage it. So AI right now is like one of my best friends because it'll help simplify something that I'm trying to do that would have taken me a lot longer to do, like deep research into, potential client companies or what have you. But I don't worry about it like taking my job like some people do because there's such a human element to what I do. Being able to read the nonverbals, having a high EQ, and really connecting with individuals, I don't think a computer will be able to do that in the near term at least.
Sure. And, hopefully with AI, it's eliminating some of the tasks that take up a lot of time and freeing up your time to do some higher level strategy type work.
The value added. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds like you've jumped on the bus then.
I am on the bus.
You're
I
on the
am
bus.
sitting right next to the driver, like needing a backseat driver. I'm so all in on it.
Fantastic. Can you share a success story or milestone that you're particularly proud of and what contributed most to that success?
So again, kind of a work in progress as opposed to a success. I mean, I could pick on different successes, but I'm currently in the final stages of a book that I've been working on. And I have for years I've had folks tell me, you should write a book, you should write a book. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know, it's a commitment. But I also had a lot of people asking me about coaching and what's executive coaching like, and what kinds of problems do you talk through, and what are those relationships like? And the thing that I kept telling everyone was part of the reason why I love being an executive coach is because I learn from every single client I work with. As much as they get out of it, I get twofold, right? And so I started writing this book about, the lessons I learned from my clients. And it's just like stories about, here's the situation, here's a problem they presented with. Here are some of the things that we work through, and here's what I took away from it. Right. And so I'm really proud of my own discipline of actually sitting down and actually doing it. But, it's also really pretty cool for me to look back and to just be like, I've met some of the most wonderful and interesting people who have taught me so many things, and sharing that with others in a way that's really digestible because it's a lot of storytelling. I think others can learn from it as well. So,
What is the name of your or the title of your book?
it's I've changed it several times.
Okay.
So I'm not really committed to anything yet, but I will say there is a great chapter called "Don't Be a D," and that I'll let you finish the thought of that.
Okay.
But that was based on one particular client interaction where that was my advice. They were like, "Well, so how are you going to help me with my problem?" And I was like, "Oh, you just need to not be this, horrible person." And it was just really interesting because it solved a lot of problems for that individual. Just kind of having that front of mind. So yeah, it's
I'm
why
sure
I
you have a
love
lot of good stories.
good stories. I will say actually there is another thing that is completed that I am proud of. So I in what was it? August of this year, I was kind of bored because, everyone's off vacationing and my kids had all kinds of commitments so we couldn't go anywhere. So I was just like, well, what should I do? And I created a board game, which is like an actual board game, and it's about leadership principles and various competencies and how do you play the game as you rise in leadership? How do you influence people? How do you negotiate? How do you, all of those things. And I'm super proud of it because it was literally a fever dream that I had one night. Woke up in a hotel and I was like, I have an idea. And then it just kind of, I was, again, if you do something you love, you just pour your heart and soul into it. And in 1 month, came up with an entire design, tons of various situation cards and scenarios, whatever. And now I have a full-fledged game. And I've since designed a workshop to go along with it
That's really fun.
for it to not have fun. So I try to infuse that as much as I can,
Sure.
as we're dealing with real world everyday problems.
Hmm. Speaking of problems, every business faces challenges. What have been some of your biggest growth or scaling roadblocks recently?
Well, I mean, in the past, I'll say I limited to the past like 2 to 3 years. We have had so much influx, right? So we had a presidential election, we had geopolitical, wars in different places and such. We've had economic issues. We've had, so many things. Even weather is much more severe than it used to be. And all of those uncontrollable on an individual level situations leads companies to be very concerned about their spend. Like, they want to keep more in the bank than out the door. Makes sense. We do that on a personal level. We might budget a little bit more tightly in times where there's uncertainty. As a consultant, well, that's my bread and butter. It's working with these organizations. So it's been a little bit of a challenge, but a good understanding. I predicted it. I knew it was going to happen because there was so much change. And then after the change, everyone has to settle and feel, comfortable and confident again. And there will be an upswing. But really, the challenge has been as companies have been a little bit more tight-fisted getting, getting commitments for contracts, even though they see it as beneficial and necessary to grow their people. It's a little bit back burner to some of the other things like supply chain that they're still focused on.
So, how do you typically approach solving these types of problems?
So I think there's a couple of things. One is just continue to do good work, right? Just do good work, bring value to the clients that we are engaged with. Secondarily, build your pipeline, build your network, reach out to people and, make sure that you're connected. And use that connection not to sell, but to understand what people are grappling with. And if there's an
Mhm.
opportunity to help them with that, put that forward. There isn't always, and that's okay, right? If you take the mindset of being more of someone who's in service to them rather than, can I get a contract for X amount with them? It's going to help your mental state. For me personally, it just keeps me more authentic and more value driven because I'm not of the upsell help. Instead, it's what do you need and can I help you with that? And maybe I can't help you with that, but I'll send you to someone who can. Or maybe I can, but we start that in the new year, right? So that I think is important. And I think the last element is establishing yourself as a thought leader, so putting out thought leadership, appearing on podcasts, answering these kinds of questions, having a defined point of view. I think it also builds credibility as well as, it's great visibility. And I think if you package all of those things together, good work, good network, and thought leadership, eventually it pays off.
Yeah. Well, looking ahead, where do you want Avion Consulting to be within the next year?
I'd love to see us double, our revenue in the next year. I think it's very possible. We have some very impressive clients that we work with, some really big names, and we have some smaller companies who just emerging into onto the new space, right, that's been created. So lots of new relationships that we can work with and help nurture and grow. There's an opportunity for us to really bring great value, and therefore double revenue. For me, more important than that, it's not so much doubling the revenue, but it's actually more so personally doubling my connections and doubling my ability to help solve problems. So you asked about, what's my hope for Avion, so revenue. What's my hope for myself personally? It's really just continuing to establish myself as a trusted advisor and someone that people want to work with who can help them.
What do you think would help you get there faster or more efficiently to hit that goal?
So interestingly, when we first connected and you were introducing yourself and you talked about having a background in like sales and marketing, I do not have that, right? I came from like Pfizer, Merck, Genentech, like these massive organizations that had a really great company, a department that focused on marketing and sales. So I don't have that skill. So for me, and I always kind of like it's my own personal conversion from having a fixed mindset to being more open-minded about it. But, I've always sort of thought of, well, sales is kind of pushy and kind of gross. And I have to, reconfigure my thinking on it because instead it really is about how can I help you achieve what you need to achieve? And so my greatest challenge is learning the skills to be able to demonstrate that genuine need for me to be in service, right? And that's just how I'm oriented. That's what motivates me. How do I connect that with the right messaging to the right people?
Well, looking back kind of on your career or Avion Consulting, what's one lesson you've learned on your journey? Something maybe you wish you had known earlier.
I wish that I had learned earlier that it's okay to fail. It's okay to not know something and to ask for help or to ask clarifying questions. It's okay to be human. And more than anything, it's okay to be your one true self. So I think many of us have like a work persona and then we have who we really are at home with our family and friends. I think that's exhausting. I think that we're one person. So just be true to who you are no matter what you're located in the moment, in the office or in the backyard. I wish I knew that when I was younger and I wasn't trying so hard on the 20%, of what came out as the outcome for the 80% of effort that I put into it. And instead just really realizing authenticity is really the key.
Well said. This has been such an insightful conversation. Thanks so much for joining me today, Nazma. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners find you online or learn more about Avion Consulting?
Well, I am fortunate enough to have a name that is not a common one. So it's very easy to just Google me and you'll find me. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn. I also have my own website, which is nazmarosado.com. And then, of course, there's avionconsulting.com. So those are three places you can find me. And yeah, I really encourage anyone who has questions, want to have a conversation. I'm 100% here for let's just have a chat and have an, exploratory conversation.
Nazma, thanks so much again for being here and sharing your story. I really enjoyed hearing your insights. And for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in to The Growth Shift.